All right, welcome to another Little Talk with PopCultX. I'm here joined this morning by Brendan McNamara. Welcome, Brendan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
I first came into your world, so to speak, when I started watching the show Loudermilk, and you fabulously portrayed the character of Tom Blitt on the show. Brendan, how did you start in show business? What got you into it? What made you love to create?
Yeah, I think like most human beings, with very few exceptions, I created as a young child. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like almost every
Mm-hmm.
child I know, at some point, you'll find them doodling, making sculpture, doing things. So I did that as a kid.
Right.
By the time I was 4, my dad at the time was kind of doing more like sculptural art, almost like Andy
Oh,
Goldsworthy
nice.
stuff. He was like an art
Mm-hmm.
student dude. And then he had a day job at a frame shop. And then he was kind of drifting, didn't know what he wanted to do, and then sort of fell into filmmaking. And I
Okay.
was his cheapest actor. So I've been acting in front of a camera since I was 4 years old.
That's
My mom
awesome.
was an actress before she had me, and then sort of kind of gave it up because it was like, she was like in children's theater around Boston and stuff like that. So,
Hmm.
but she was like, this isn't that great to raise a kid on. Instead, she did like 3 or 4 jobs while she was a single mom for a while with me. So in some ways, I was raised in the business in the least nepotistically advantageous way possible. So I've been doing this. I mean, in some ways, I've been kind of doing this forever.
Right,
I'm only getting paid to do it much later. Although my dad eventually had to, when I was, I think 7 or 8 years old, I quit acting. Kind of like Sean Penn, who's quit acting like 4 or 5 times. I quit acting. I was like, I'm not going to perform anymore. So he had to bribe me into one of his short films with a trip to Disney World or
that's
New
cool.
York City. So I think that was technically my first paid gig.
That day works for me. I had to bribe my sisters. My first thing was directing like shows for my parents in our living room. I remember like having like turning the couch over, so it was like almost like a puppet theater in a way, but directing my sisters. And yeah, that was fun. I remember that. So I understand what you're saying about getting the nepotism in there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think in some families that play is fostered rather continuously. So I think
Mhm.
I was blessed to be in a family where play could be your job potentially. Now,
Right.
no one else in my family, like my dad stayed in the business or whatever, or he, kept going. The rest of my mom never did. And like, I have a whole side of the family that has very practical jobs, but it was never discouraged. You know what I mean? Where I feel like in some families at some point, you've got to grow up. Enough play.
No, that's true.
Get your work done. And that sort of play thing gets sort of pushed down and pushed down. And then people have to find a hobby later in life just to exercise that part of themselves or whatever. But in some ways, I guess I never really, really stopped messing around with that part of myself.
Well, that's really cool. Well, we're lucky that you didn't.
Kept going, man. Yeah.
Right.
Can't stop me.
So how do you keep learning or educating yourself in the creative arts?
It's fun. Nowadays is very different, obviously, than when I first started as a young child. Although in some ways similar, because I was raised like with a dad who was like making short films on the regular.
Right.
He would take them to film festivals and stuff like that. Whereas nowadays, of course, you can just make stuff and upload it in an afternoon. Quite a bit different than having to splice together celluloid. But I think first and foremost, you can I've always sort of continued like my quote unquote training through observation of culture that can take place at any time. YouTube is a fantastic resource in terms of like, if you just want to like pick up specific skills, I think more than anything, accents or regionalities or whatever. But especially with acting specifically, all you have to do is be around people. And so in some ways, this past year when people weren't allowed to be around people, I don't know how other actors felt. I mean, there's plenty of introverts in the acting world, but you're like, wait a second. No, this is almost like what people complain about when they get too famous. So many actors are like, I can't be an actor anymore. I'm too famous because I can't watch people. I can't just sit around and observe people. I'm so aware of being observed. So I'm really an actor's like primary, I would say, or any actor's sort of primary mode of continuing to like absorb information is about observation. Is about seeing people, watching people move, and you kind of take that with you. Especially if people aren't watching you, you can immediately start sort of imitating, taking people on, memorizing little bits, writing things in your notebook. a lot of it, I mean, so much of it is observational and physical and the ability to listen and to live. It's now, this may be me glibly not wanting to spend money on acting classes, but I do feel like it is a truism that we have to be able to like absorb the world. You know what I mean? We are sort of like anthropologists and psychologists and artists all kind of blended in, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you can get around people,
right,
we can do it. We're learning, we're growing.
I saw in your bio that you started out mainly as an improv at the Hot House.
Yeah. You know, I still to this day have no idea who wrote that bio.
How did I get there?
It's so weird. I know. I signed up for IMDb Pro at some point because I wanted to upload more headshots and stuff. I was I finally learned. It'll say uploaded by, and it was like uploaded by user. And I was like, I don't know. Literally, I don't know. It made me feel famous, though. I was like, some unknown person like wrote a bio for me.
Hey, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's neat. I'm assuming they must have seen my work at Hot House. It was a improv theater in North Hollywood, California, and no longer exists now. But it was a sort of a 99-seat theater, you know, not a giant place. Yeah. I mean, very few improv studios, especially at the time, very few improv places are that large anyway. But it was a shows every Friday and Saturday night, and it was packed to the gills every single week. Awesome. So it was great. It was that kind of like small theater, but it feels alive. It feels vibrant. There was always a band. It was like there was a live band as part of our process. We didn't take suggestions. It was all very like flowy, artsy. You just come out on stage, move with the music, create stuff, and then eventually a show just begins. You work in silence until the first scene happens, and you're all just kind of co-creating. It was such a vibrant artistic community, and that's where I discovered like a love of improv. I'd never done improv before, and at least there, it was probably one of the first times that I think I got like weekly positive feedback, because especially as a performer who I've done live theater and stuff, but it was never my jam. I sort of started in film, and that's all I ever wanted to do. And feedback on film is it can sometimes never really happen. I mean, someone, you know, the director's going to be, or your dad might be like, hey, good take. You know? But like, and then maybe eventually you'll go to like one screening. As a kid, I went to screenings of things when they got into film festivals and things. You'd watch it one time, people would come up and tell you it's a good job, but that's really all you get. But improv is such a continual feedback loop. Definitely. And I was like, I was hooked for a while. No, like I was on the junk.
On the improv juice. Yep.
I was.
I hear that. I mean, I did improv in high school. So yeah, I get that. It's adrenaline rush. It really is.
It really is fantastic. Yeah. That was the only other experience I had with improv. Was in high school. I was in a sort of, I guess, a theater group / social movement thing called, what was it called? Go Theater or something like that. It was like, anyway, it was like we improvised scenes, almost more like Mike Lee style, improvised scenes with other actors. And then we turned those scenes into scripts. And then we memorized those scripts, and we took those scripts around to different schools around the area. So they had to do with like teen pregnancy or peer pressure or blah, blah, blah. PG-13 players. That's what it was called. So it was like, you know, it's not quite R-rated. It was a little after school specialty, but we tried to do it from like a real place. And that was the only experience I had with improv, was all like dramatic, you know?
Right. What area of the country did you grow up in?
Well, I'm from the eastern seaboard of the United States.
Okay.
Lived in Maine, lived in Florida, and a bunch of places in between that. If I had a coming of age story, it would feel like a Stephen King novel, because that would probably take place in Maine, New England area.
Right.
But I moved a lot. I changed schools 11 times before I graduated high school. Yeah. So around.
So how closely do you keep your tabs on like pop culture? You said you're always observing. So do you notice things and trends and stuff in pop culture and say, hey, that's pretty cool, I got to jump on that? Or you enjoy something for a moment?
I do. Sometimes I am concerned about myself, and this might be a lot of creators' issue, is we're like, am I consuming much more than I'm creating? And I've had times in my life where I was definitely creating more and paying almost no attention. But at the same time, that wasn't always the greatest idea, to not pay attention. Because it can be satisfying, but it can also be sort of self-indulgent if you're not paying any attention to what's going on. You're like, what is going to feed people? Where are they hungry? And that could be in terms of paying attention and seeing what's missing, but that's also paying attention to like what buffet lines people are lining up for. And therefore you can create, I think I've had this, like, maybe I grew up in a generation where it was like selling out was like the worst thing. And of course, nowadays everyone's like, I'm eager to sell out so then I can make money to continue to create, which is exactly what all of us want, And so that's sometimes true. I'm like, oh, who cares about the audience? They don't know anything anyway. That's one of the reasons I never liked theater that much. I was like, what does the audience know anyway? I am the audience. So certain lack of self-regard there. But no, I am a rabid consumer of pop culture. I have huge gaps in my sort of my Trivial Pursuit level knowledge, or my quiz night at the bar. I didn't really grow up with television in my house for easily a decade or a half. So there's whole big chunks of nostalgia that I don't necessarily glom onto. Films I watched a ton throughout my childhood. Whenever I grew up separate from my dad. So I would go visit my dad, like once a month or something for a couple of weekends. And then all of a sudden, all the bets were off. There was no rating of movie I could not watch. The first film I was ever taken to, I think I was like 3 or 4 years old, was Seven Samurai. Then he took me to Werner Herzog's Aguirre, The Wrath of God. I mean, he was taking me to films when I could barely read with subtitles and violence, sex, etc. So then I could get access to all the pop culture I wanted. Then when I was at home, it was way harder. So I was just in the world of comic books. But yeah, no, I can't stop consuming. I
hear you.
I can't, even when I sometimes give myself be like, oh, okay, these 2 days a week, can I just find silence or find peace in nature? I was like, there's so much content in the world. And especially now in this moment of time we're in, oh my goodness. I mean, with how good television is. And I know a lot of people, the Martin Scorsese's of the world or whatever are like upset. And I understand it that comic book movies are dominating our entertainment landscape. Comic books taught me vocabulary. They taught me story. They taught me storyboarding. They taught me about life. I'm huge comic book fan since I was a small child. And so I feel like I'm living in dreamland. I mean, 12-year-old me is I can't believe that I can just turn up my TV on Wednesday. And then there's a Loki comic book as a TV show. I was like, I probably wouldn't even have gotten the Loki comic, but I would have sat in the comic book store on the floor and read it at least. And that's that easy. I can just click and press play. So, I mean, it's almost a dangerous time, man. There's too much good stuff. It's a problem. I can almost get conspiracy theory about it and be like, what happened? What are they what are they? I don't even know who they are. What are they doing right now that they're giving us this much goodness? This has to be bait in some sort of trap because it's so good.
No, I can understand that. I mean, there is so much content. I see it, and I've heard other people say, I don't like when we call it content.
I know I don't like it either. But I find myself using it. I was like, I don't know what the better word is.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And there's so much good material out there, there you go. That it's just not overwhelming, but it's hard to find time in the day to watch it all and consume it all. It really is, from movies to all. Now I'll call it the streaming wars, because every single streaming platform is pushing out quality stuff. I mean, really is. Yeah. And the traditional broadcast channels, I think, are really having a hard time catching up now.
It's so difficult. I mean, they still have so much money and they still can lure certain types of talent to the security and money. I mean, network money is still ludicrous. Okay,
that's true. Money helps.
I was thinking about I was just watching the Bo Burnham Inside for the second time, which I think is a work of potential. It's almost genius. But he was talking about he's got a song about having FaceTiming with his mom, and in it his mom is narrating the season 6 finale of The Blacklist. And I was like, The Blacklist. I was like, I consume a ton of pop culture, but when people talk about Blue Bloods or The Blacklist, I was like, I mean, I know what it is, but I don't know. Never seen an episode. But you look at someone like James Spader, right, who was a heartthrob, almost pre Brad Pitt heartthrob dude, right?
Right.
And now he's a little bit like a portly bald guy. But talk about the security of that amount of, I mean, the millions, let alone as an actor, just business wise, the residual millions of network stuff. Once you get to syndication money, I mean, it's like you can be set for life. Whereas like even for Netflix, I think about it as from an actor performance. Listen, not that I'm even like vying for contracts and like competition between network and contracts, how successful I am. But like, but you can get paid on a Netflix thing, but your sort of residual payout later is much less. Your exposure is larger. Your opportunity for more work is greater. But I think it's in some ways that's going to keep the networks hanging on, but they are not doing a good job of hanging on in terms of making material, making stuff, making art and craft blended that is really penetrating the culture or of any historical significance. You know what I mean? I mean, NCIS, I mean, how many billions of people have watched NCIS? But is NCIS really is it going to mean anything to culture in the next 10 years? You know what I mean? Is it going to be like a Seinfeld where people still like obsess over it? Although who knows, right? Because Friends, people still think Friends is the bee's. When that was on, I was just like, populist entertainment. No one's going to care about this. As soon as it goes over, people are going to forget it the next year. Now there's reunions and people are crying. People are crying on Twitter. They're like, I can't believe they were in love the whole time. I knew it. So, I mean, I could be totally wrong about that.
I think it's hard to say what's really going to stick. I mean, it really is. And
no idea.
I think that's the great thing about the streaming platforms is that they provide an opportunity for so many content creators, lack of a better term, to be able to put their work out into the world.
It's that opportunity. It's amazing. And especially I've been relishing the access now that we've never really had outside of, like in like Napster era for a while when it was a little bit Wild West in the world of streaming. We had access to kind of everything from around the world. But now I think Netflix has done the best job of it. It's just like cool shows from everywhere in Danish, in Thai, in Korean, in Turkish. You know what I mean? You're just like, wait a like other than I barely knew these things existed. You know what I mean? You'd hear about them in some like sort of pop culture news piece of like, Everybody Loves Raymond documentary. And when they were like, oh, they made it in Russia. It was like, you're like, oh yeah. Or when the office, you see, they'll show some montage on The Office of like, oh, here's The Office in India. I was like, oh, wow, that's why Ricky Gervais is such a jerk because he's a billionaire from selling the same idea, whatever, like 27 times around the world. Like, okay, that gives you security to be like, yeah, I'm pretty much you can't cancel me. I'm inordinately wealthy. Yeah.
I can say whatever I want at the Golden Globes. Too.
Yeah, because we can nerd out with people around the world now. Like here's this Ragnarok or whatever. Like I can nerd out on some Nordic fantasy series that they're nerding out across the world on. Man, I love it.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. So if you had a dream role that you could play, what would it be? Given all the content out there, if someone said, "Hey, Brendan, what role do you want?"
I'm not sort of effete enough or British to do Loki, but it's just by happenstance. I mentioned it just because I was watching it this week. But like a charismatic supervillain, like a charismatic, awful, sociopathic criminal is just my dream world. That is always, I think, my favorite roles since I was a kid.
I hear you.
Like as a child, the roles that I did, and literally like sometimes for like 2 or 3 days, Daniel Day-Lewis in My Left Foot, Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man, David Thewlis in Naked. I pretty much imitated, I think, for like 3 days once when I was on a train in the UK with my dad. So there are some roles that I just like glommed onto in terms of like those sort of performative, immersive, physical alterations. Anything that does that. I mean, I think that's most actors crack, but maybe I'm just speaking for myself. But especially adding that all together, especially, and then the 90s, I feel like, especially to the charismatic sort of cameo villain was always, I'm thinking of it like Gary Oldman in True Romance is perfect. I mean, let's him in The Professional too, but like, especially in True Romance, this like one scene doing this super weird, like white boy with dreads or whatever, like just being completely evil and enormously likable. It's just, that's all I've ever wanted.
That is, villains are They're villains, but they get the better roles and the better
They really
lines.
do. It's so meaty. And I was even like that as a kid, and like doing, I did plays all throughout school, ever since grade school, all through high school. And I was just thinking about this the other day too, where I remember as I think in like third or fourth grade, and I didn't even go out for the lead because there was this one character that had this like song where he got to sing and stutter. And I was like, ooh, that's a fun thing. Give me a fun little something.
Right. I don't want it just to be clean and pristine. I want to give it more. Yeah.
I just want to give me something to play with, something playful and weird and unusual. Like that is the jam. And especially when I like actually came out to Los Angeles and even in theater school at Northwestern, I just I'm not attractive enough to get the lead anyway. I'm just not quite the level of symmetry and beauty. Because especially speaking of network, a lot of the leads, unless they're previously famous people like a James Spader or whatever, has definitely passed his gorgeous symmetry years. But in general, like a lot of people who get leads they look like ding dang print models.
Yeah,
most of them. They're like wildly attractive, and I'm suitably attractive. I'm not. And that actually, that's a literal problem for me. I've literally had agents be like, you know what, you're just in this middle zone. Like if you could, and for a while I was bigger than I am now. And they're like, if you could gain just like another 50 pounds or so, you could kind of be like the fat funny guy. And then that would be good.
Man.
Or like you could slim down. And like, if you were like ultra fit, then maybe we can kind of get you into that like action-y best friend. I've always been sort of in between. In some ways that's like, I've sort of struggled because of that, but I didn't necessarily want to take on the extra weight in order to mess with myself. But the beard helped. The beard helped me for like 10 years, just book work or whatever. Just because I was like, oh, that scrubbed you up. It makes you a little different.
How very Walking Dead of you with the beard. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Dude, I was ahead of the curve, man.
There you go.
I was pre Zach Galifianakis on this one. That dude, I mean, if I ever meet him in person, I literally got to give him a hug. I mean, if not for Zach Galifianakis, I wouldn't have booked probably certainly like 90% of the commercials I did, because his bearded, like affable self in The Hangover, I swear, like just opened up a whole new realm of like stuff bearded guys could do. Because before this, I would be like, okay, it's homeless, it's biker. I was like in an insurance commercial one time where I was this like weird redneck who found an armadillo and thought it was an alien or whatever. Like that's the kind of stuff I got to do with the beard. And then after Galifianakis, man, all of a sudden you were like, yeah, you're bearded best friend, you're bearded dad, you're like bearded oaf. And then you're like, all right, cool. It's a thing. It's a thing you can have.
That's cool. No, yeah, I hear you. I mean, I was once told by a casting director, if you ever go to set, go with the beard, because if they need multiple characters, you just shave it down and you can get back in there with someone else or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Every time I shave my beard, I pretty much do 3 or 4 facial hairstyles on the way down. If I'm going to trim it, I'll kind of do these, and then I'll do the chop. I'm going to do just the mustache, then I'll do the Hitler stash. Just because that's the only time you can is when you're alone. Thanks a lot. I mean, that guy was awful. Hitler was terrible anyway, but then the fact that he pretty much destroyed a mustache style for like the rest of history. Charlie Chaplin, like one of the mustache, one of the most famous like actors in Hollywood history. You're like, oh, it'd be cool to have a Chaplin. You're like, nope,
can't do it.
That guy killed it. I mean, he's done way worse things, but I'm just saying, like, we don't even talk about all the awful things that he's ruined just by his association with them. But yeah, no, absolutely. Actually, well, speaking of on Loudermilk, I auditioned with a beard. The part that they had seen, I at least had stubble, I think, that got me called in for it. And then I showed up to set with probably this level beard, maybe even bigger, assuming this is what I was going to look like. And came in, met Peter Farrelly, and then they were like, okay, cool. Well, I think I want him to shave. Let's shave that down to nothing. And then we'll go shoot this first scene. And I got to tell you, you have a beard, so there's an exposure there.
There is.
I was like, maybe you don't understand because you don't have a beard, Mr. Farrelly. And nor was I going to actually even argue. I didn't say anything. I said, yes, sir, and went back to the trailer. And then tried not to freak out. I was like, I haven't been rehearsing these lines without a beard. It's a totally different. I have a pretty expressive face. So I was like, I actually have to change my performances depending on how much my face is covered. This is almost like wearing a mask for me a little bit. which is a whole nother sort of psychological road, of course, to ride down. But this is almost like, I was like, would you have done this to a woman? Like if a woman showed up on set, would you be like, yeah, she's got shoulder length hair. Let's trim it up. Let's give her a pixie cut. I was like, no, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't, sir. So I don't know why it's okay to do to me. It is, but it's a weird, you know how it is. This is like,
I understand.
This can be me. It can be very meaningful. It can be a bit of a crutch, but it's also like, I don't know. It changes your face a lot. Every time I shave, all I do is I see my dad in the mirror. Like I see how much I look like my father, and I like my dad a lot, but it still freaks me out, you know?
Right. Yeah, I hear you. Every time I shave, I see all my insecurities. So it's Absolutely. Yeah, the beard covers it all.
It does. And I have a chin. It's not like I'm completely chinless, but I definitely, whenever I shave it, I immediately, I start feeling this little waddle, the little extra skin under your chin. I'm like, oh gosh, yeah, my lips are so small. I forgot that. I have pretty substantial ears. I was mocked. One of my nicknames in school, even though I went to multiple schools, got the same nickname, Dumbo. Because my ears have been the same size almost my whole life. It was weird. So if I have a beard, it kind of helps my face balance. So every time I shave, I look at my face. I'm like, oh my gosh, I look like my dad. I'm getting old. And then my ears are so huge. How is anyone going to see anything else? Yeah. It brings securities out immediately. And I'm an actor already, right? So I'm already a little obsessed with the image,
Well, you brought up Loudermilk, and I'm glad that you did, because first off, fabulous job in it. It was my wife and I, when we first sat down to watch it, and we really got invested into your character's arc in there.
Yeah.
And I wanted to touch base a little bit on that. And how was it, first working with Peter Farrelly?
Yeah.
Being in I'm a big fan of him because of his inclusivity. And
it's so casual. It's so casual, dude.
It is.
I mean, I know they got recognized like last year for like an award for it or whatever, but that's after doing it for like 15 to 20 years, man.
Right. Going back and watching.
Like, look we've also given a job today.
Right.
Like, sometimes they talk about it and make jokes about it just like you would in real life. Sometimes there's someone's just there and you're like, how did that person get cast? They're never going to tell you, and get over it. It's just a person.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and they've been doing it forever. And you're right. It is casual, and it's just they're casting who they feel fits the role, and they're not doing it just to do it.
Yeah.
And especially with your character and how you got dragged into the whole group setting. How did you prepare for that and being taken down from where your character was at the beginning to where he ended up at the end of season 3? That big story arc. That was crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is a huge arc. That was really one of the things that made me elated to do it. I mean, listen, I'm not, again, so famous or successful an actor that I'm going to stub my nose at pretty much anything anyone offers me. But this was the most dream come true gig I have ever gotten. It came to me. Literally, my manager called me and said, Peter Farrelly wrote you a part in his new show.
Wow.
Now, that's not completely true, but it makes a good story. It's true. But I'm just saying the information itself wasn't completely true. But I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. My mind moves pretty fast. So like within about 35 seconds, I was like, I could see how that's possible, but this really seems like something only I could have thought up if I was extremely high. And like, you know what? Maybe someone sees this thing. But I was like, I don't know Peter Farrelly. I am not famous. I don't know what he even would have seen me in. I mean, I've made, at this point, I made more money in commercials than anything. I've done more like improv on the stage for, a packed house of 100. I was like, what in the world? Why is this even possible? So, and I love the Farrelly brothers. Like, I love that level of insane comedy.
Me too.
Kingpin, I think I saw at least 2 times in the theaters. I saw it opening night with a packed theater. Like Kingpin, especially for me, like I remember the feeling and like the pain. It was one of those movies that caused me physical pain from laughing so much.
Yeah, Bill Murray.
So hilarious. In terms of being an outsider feeling discombobulated in a situation that I'm not in control of. That was literally my experience. I was you know what I mean? I'm a semi nobody getting yoinked into this experience, and all I had to do was kind of stay in that discomfort was one of my key things as an actor and as a human being, which is a little weird because, of course, as a human being, I want to get there and I want to kind of override the discomfort. I typically want to make everyone think I'm smart and funny and kind. Those are the three things I want everyone to think. Okay. But I actually ended up focusing when I did come in. I was like, I'm not quite method, but I do like to stay somewhere approximating the energy of where my character is going to occupy. And so that's kind of where I stayed. I stayed in that place where I felt a little bit like an interloper. Like I don't know how I got here. Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to do my best while I'm here, but I'm out. I am on the outside. I'm literally on the outside. I did come up later in shooting too. So the whole group scenes had already been shot, even in season 1. So I did come in and everyone did already have a camaraderie. So I already felt sort of uncomfortable and weird. Okay. I am literally an actor, Brendan McNamara, pretending to be another person, Tom Blitt. So in terms of like the performative like weirdness of it, I was like, it felt very, for me as a performer, it felt very meta the way I was.
I can see that.
I was getting myself into it. You know what I mean? I was like, this is not for the audience. The audience isn't going to be like, oh, there's an actor pretending to be an actor. You know what I mean? I don't think it's in anyone's mind, but at least for me performatively, that was actually a huge part of it, of like kind of staying a little bit on the outside, letting myself be a little more quiet around people, a little more awkward. And then just also for me, kind of, since there was a whole arc to this character, this is just total actor nerd stuff, but like figuring out like how my physicality was going to alter over the trajectory of the entire narrative was then the only other thing I really needed to like lock myself into, how I was going to play that out. And for me, a lot of it was like, I started when I'm shooting flashbacks, I'm still kind of like a little lowish, a little bit of this, little like obsequious, you know, but not completely. But then once I get in the group, I'm like way shut down. Most of the time of the group, I'm fully hunched. And then it's this constant state of trying to like grow. And then I even have opportunity for growth that Cutter, largely through his whole storyline, renders almost impossible. So then I'm literally like, then I'm under assault. Then it stays this way, you know, until the very, very end of the show that I kind of, by the end of the season, I kind of finally try to like, I'm going to do this. I'm doing this. And then, of course, at the end of season 1, I actually fail. So it's funny to me, for me, the whole season like sort of begins in this hunchy thing, grows a little bit, and then shrinks again. And then they bring me back. And basically, I have to come in slinking back all over again. You know, so it's funny to me. I've sort of arced and then sort of plummeted all over again, which is amazing, again, for like a small part and a nobody person to have that significant a trajectory. You know what I mean? Most parts that I go out for are you come in, you do exactly what your character kind of is supposed to do. And then that's pretty much your job forever. Every once in a while, you'll get one line that kind of like has a glimpse of your secret life. But Loudermilk was fantastic because it really had like transformation and change and, you know, a genuine trajectory. Like it was a real storyline, you know?
What was it like in, just one last question about Loudermilk, and it really, the end of season 3 in that group setting when Ryan Regan was storming out and he was just fed up with the group setting. What was the mood in that room? Because I was on pins and needles at home watching it. I can only imagine what it was like in the room.
It's so good. Listen, Ryan Regan he's notably talented as a stand-up comedian. He is known. He is a comedian's comedian. He is well regarded. So it's a little annoying, honestly, how good he was in season 3. In season 1, man, he was still getting his sea legs. He was still a little like, you know, a little, honestly, I think even not nervous about the process, but definitely like myself, like feeling a little bit like an outsider to the process. You know, he is, I assume that dude can get on a stand-up stage anywhere in the world, maybe in another language, and pretty much breeze his way through it energetically, you know? In season 1, he's still kind of feeling it out. He was super encouraging to me. And even though I was like, I know you've barely ever acted before, your opinion means quite a lot, sir. So thank you for helping me. But he was very giving, focused on others. He was not there to like, in his nervousness in season 1, be like, oh, I'm got to get this right. And I don't know, this is about me. He's not looking for shine. He's looking to do his thing and to help other people. That's, I mean, listen, that is every actor's job. If you're in a scene with another actor, your first job really, A, don't mess up. B, make the other actor be amazing.
Right.
So by the time season 3 comes around, when he gets that like rich of a storyline, every eye in the room is on Brian. And if the camera's not on us, we are just not blinking and cheering him on in silence.
Nice.
Because he went to such real, raw places. And we, beforehand, I think some of us, various like actor reactors, have been doing like sort of for screen acting for a long time. We're kind of just helping, like would occasionally like drop little bits of advice and then just kind of leave them alone. Not like how to do it, but just like, oh, you're doing great. Yeah. Hey, if you need to stay in that place, just stay in that place. We'll leave you alone. But he was intense about it. And I think I got the sense both of he wanted to stay very real in that emotional place, but he also kind of wanted to like get it right.
Right.
I had the sense that he was very aware of the emotional heft of what he was being asked to bear, that it was real and based on real stuff. So if he did in any way condescend to it or try to make it too jokey, that he would be condescending to people's real experience. And I think that would hurt, that would like hurt his sensibility, that would hurt his conscience. So all we did, man, in that scene is just watch him and then wait until they finally called cut and we were able to just applaud.
Wow.
Like he got so real with it, got just raw with it, let go of because he can make stuff funny. That's literally his job, to make simple things funny. And so to let go of that instinct, especially while performing, I mean, just phenomenal. Yeah. We just got to watch, we got to watch and witness. And really, like, I don't know, I barely know the guy. I was like, I felt proud. I was like, I'm so proud of him. He was so freaking good. Like, it was like, it's almost annoying. I mean, I don't know if I've been on Twitter, like looking, and people are like, we didn't know, Brian Regan, that you could be like this,
exactly.
That you could be this good. This is crazy. He was so good, and he was handled a lot, so good.
He was. I mean, I've had friends who've struggled with addictions and whatnot, and just seen. And I was teeter-totting whether or not to share with them Loudermilk based upon, I didn't want it to trigger anything, but I ended up did. And they told me that, he nailed it. Exactly the feelings that they went through were some of what he had to experience. Yeah. And just seeing it on the screen. So there's that whole inclusivity thing. So they felt like their story was being included, and they watched something that they could relate to. So. Yeah.
And just that experience of, this is a little gendered, but I don't think it's completely inaccurate, especially as a man, feelings of failing in your performance of like your right duties. That's it. Like to see that sort of sit on him. And he's a dad too. So I know for him, like failing as a dad, I have no doubt every father who exists knows for a fact that they have already failed as a father. If their child's 2 years old, how many dozens of times have you've already failed? But that can sit on you in real shame. And that's something in general, I don't think most people really want to hang on to and examine too long, because that can bring you down, especially if you have any tendency towards addictive behavior, which I have a ton in my family. Like that can be dangerous, really, to kind of like linger too much on guilt, even if it's real. And you do want to deal with it, right? You do want to process it healthily. So to see him sort of like, to go to that place and sit in that, I think it's a powerful thing that actually actors can do in general too, is safely walk us as human beings through a process that is exceedingly dangerous, but necessary for us to go through. Catharsis, we all require catharsis, right?
That is true.
A horror movie is like a really like a grand version of it to like make it a little safer for our intellectual consideration. But like, right? So like we can go through the roller coaster of being murdered or whatever, chased down and murdered. For us to cathartically kind of deal with our own fear of death, our own fear of terror, our own how we would deal with, speaking of Walking Dead, right? So how we would deal with like cataclysmic situations. So, I mean, that can be the very profound thing of, let's be honest, Loudermilk is occasionally profound, but it's also occasionally super silly and ridiculous.
Right.
But you can balance those two things and deliver both of those things, and they're both cathartic in their own ways and like genuinely helpful. I'm hoping for people.
Well, I think they are. So, and I think you helped. I don't want to say help, but yes, you did help. I mean, especially with me watching it and seeing how people can get taken down from where they thought they were in life and just broken down. And that happens on the regular to a lot of people. So seeing how people can still get back up and still keep moving forward. Kudos to you and kudos to the whole cast. And I'm so glad that I was able to find that show. I mean, and Ron Livingston's just amazing actor. I remember watching him in Office Space for the first time, seeing him there. And then I kind of lost track of him. And I guess my co-host, when I told him about the show, he said, "Oh yeah, he's the guy from the Conjuring movies and stuff."
Yeah.
And I was like,
he's been steadily working, but it wasn't honestly until Loudermilk. And then he was literally on like Loudermilk billboards in LA. And then he was also on billboards for another like network show where it was almost like a big chill thing where he was a character who committed suicide. I was like, that dude is on billboards for 2 shows right now. I was like, he's like 50 years old. He's pretty much steadily working. Enough.
Yeah.
Since flipping like Office Space or even Swingers, right?
That's right. Swingers. Yeah.
Yeah. Dude's been working, but that was like, I think he's especially excellent in these shows, honestly, when he gets the opportunity to kind of like play that. I don't even know, like it's old school, man. There's something old school about his character in that thing. And even the way he performs, this is like a Walter Matthau, like hangdog, but like real, but also sort of manipulated art to the way he performs. It's awesome.
So also with your acting skills, I noticed that you appear alongside your wife in Guy's Grocery Challenge or Grocery Games,
Guy's Grocery Games, yeah.
How was that experience?
Guy's Grocery Games is nothing but abject pleasure for someone who cannot cook very well. Because the pressure really is off. I mean, my job on that show, I guess 3 times now, or 4 times, I guess I've been on it. As a competitor 3 times, as a judge 1 time, is pretty much the 3 times I competed. I was like, my job is pretty much just do whatever my wife tells me to do and make jokes. I was like, I'm just going to try to make jokes and be goofy, and they can cut that in, edit that in however they want in the cut. So few of my jokes make it in. It's in some ways it's a little maddening. You know what I mean? The volume of content, of comedic content that I'm providing them that ends up in the cut. It's very frustrating. I was like, do we really need to explain our?
I'm giving you guys gold here.
Yeah, I was giving you gold. Giving you complete gold. It is so fun. It is so fun. It is breathless. It is intense. It is almost like a nightmare in that, like, there's a literal shot clock like running on you the whole time. So every time I might stop and make a joke and like grab a thing or drop a thing and pick it up and look at the clock. I'm like, oh no, like it's such a short amount of time to cook. And I cook quite a bit, for my children or whatever, which is way different than they do judge me harshly, but like if I fail, so what? Well, you still got to eat it, kids. As long as it's not, burnt or, toxic. The show is so fun. Guy Fieri, by the way, is, and I mispronounce his name all the time, so I made sure to pronounce it correctly this time. I still say Fieri, because that's how when I first saw it, I was like, Guy Fieri. Fieri, it's Italian. You can say it's an Italian name. Okay. I made that mistake on set. Whoops. But that dude is also awesome because he is just like a slightly more sedate version of exactly who you would expect him to be, which I kind of love. Like, at first you're like, oh, is this whole thing kind of a gag? It seems like it's all a bit of a put on. It's all a bit much, a little broy. And when you meet the dude, I was like, oh no, this is just this guy. This is why he's so freaking successful, because he's managed to basically just dial himself up, like 3 or 4 notches when he's on camera to kind of give it some vibrancy. But I was like, he's just being himself and people enjoy his actual self, which is, I was like, sometimes it's easy to resent some people's success. Just in general, right? And anyone, it's easy to be jealous of any human being on the face of the earth. But it's funny that dude, especially, I was like, and I feel like it's, since the first time I was on the show, even though the past 3 or 4 years, I feel like there's this whole undercurrent of people who are like, Guy Fieri is a national treasure. Like all he does is travel the world and like promote small businesses and like, and eat delicious food. Like who can hate that guy? Because I think earlier there was such a genuine food people backlash against him. And you're like, who is this joker with his, his bowling shirts and his weird like dyed spiky hair, But he's actually, the dude's a genuine pleasure. But he's also kind of like a bit of like a mob boss, like pater familias. So there's already the pressure of the clock, and he loves to antagonize the process. like literally making it worse. He's literally making it harder, which makes better television. And he thinks it's hilarious. He's there every day. So like, what else is he going to do to amuse himself? But yeah, it is strangely a super enjoyable and a genuine, like stressful, like high stress situation.
You're not the one having to cook, so it's not too bad, I guess.
Yes, I'm more of an ideation guy or whatever. And so like my wife and I, the last time we did it, we won. Like we won twice in a row. Like literally there's a couple times, honestly, that winning on that show, my wife won herself and then she and I won. That has literally like saved our lives financially. Like have literally kept us afloat. Okay. So in some ways, the show is not only super fun, I can't even really think about the fact that it can help us financially, or else I think that would literally, I would spiral out. I might pass out. I don't know. Like it's too much pressure, you know?
I hear you.
It's too intense to realize like, oh, this can actually change our existence, you know? But I'm an ideation guy. And so this last time, a couple times we performed. That's what I think of it as. It's like when we cooked.
I hear you. When you perform.
For me, it's a performance. We like, at least in the first competition, we did we sort of had two ideas that I kind of came up with. We executed my ideas, but she really did most of the executing. And we actually work very well together in that. Like I'm an idea guy, so I can definitely like conceive food. I couldn't tell you how to make it, but I was like, I know we can do this and this will be a good idea. So we actually worked really well together this last time, where it felt like I was contributing as opposed to like I'm the guy slowly chopping onions, you know, and like throwing out one-liners, you know.
Well, that's cool. Good job. Yeah. You stepped up there a little bit more.
Did something.
Is there anything that you wish you would have known about the creative industry or Hollywood or movies or before you started out? I mean, you got an early start, so yeah, I don't know what you could have known when you were 4, 5, or 7 or 8 acting in your dad's films, but is there anything when you went pro, so to speak, that you wish you would have known?
I think early on in my career, and even just creating things, I wish I would have ditched the myth of the iconoclast and embraced the truth of the village it takes to raise a project.
Okay.
In college, even especially, I was very like, I'm just going to like burrow down, do my thing, learn my stuff, write my stuff by myself, do things by myself. Like I want to be like, this is maybe why I was so drawn to Bo Burnham's Inside, or even Chloe Zhao's films too, where you're like written, directed, edited. You know what I mean? This is like, I gotcha. I did it. This is me, you know, this sort of idea of like, and you all follow this great, you know, auteur, whoever they are. And in some ways, cinema might foster that still with the credit of a film by, you know, blank. Mm-hmm. And you're like, a film by, and then of course, by the time you get to the end credits on like a Marvel movie, you're like, there's 4,000 names who made that film. A film by these 5,000 people. Mm-hmm. I think but that deprived me honestly of seeking community earlier.
Okay.
For me, that took, I'd say like 6 or 7 years in LA to actually kind of go out. And it was actually through Hot House, this improv theater that I was involved in, where I started finding a community of like-minded people who just wanted to like, just make things. That's one of the great things about like living in a place like Los Angeles, like New York, which can wear you down with like you're surrounded by people who are all also being worn down by continually trying to make things and failing, or trying to be part of things and failing, or, you know, the failure ratio is exceedingly high in any creative industry.
I hear you.
It just is. I mean, as an actor, batting, like the actors I know who book the most, they're like, whatever their field goal percentage was, I mean, at best, it's like 8%, 9%. Wow. You know what I mean? You're not, in terms of auditions, right? Even just auditions for callbacks. Like for a while, you know, especially commercially, like for a while I'd get called back like 50% of the time or whatever that I would audition, kind of fell into a good groove there. But still you're still booking at best in that world. Once you kind of like find your niche, you're still booking 1 out of, I don't know, every 12 to 15 auditions if you're doing you're doing super great, you know? So that part of it can be so destructive. And I think there's this tendency, or at least I had this tendency towards like, and I'm going to somehow do it all on my own. But the more I found people who wanted to do things with me, it's such a cliche, but like many hands make light work, or, a burden shared is a burden halved, or a sorrow shared is a sorrow half, whatever the cliche is. Basically, find some ding dang people who want to do stuff. And if I didn't do that in college at all, I didn't. And I think because I always saw it as networking, and it was like somehow demeaning. I had this moral cast to it, where it was like, I'm not looking at you as a person. I'm looking at you as someone to add to my like file folder of crew members or creatives or people who can get me work. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be self-serving in my creation of relationships. But people who love to create. It is not just self-serving to involve people in your projects, as long as you're also involved in there. It is not really self-serving to create and invite other creators to be part of your creation and join them in their creation. It absolutely serves all of you, because listen, creative people love to create. We love it. It's networking, which I looked askew at, you know what I mean, as some like the disgusting sort of capitalist corporate practice, you know what I mean? Some greasy stick hair, Patrick Bateman, talking about the texture of your cards and the embossment of your font. Like, I don't want to be that guy. But I do want to be the person who's like, works with the same crew over and over again. This is one of the great things about being part of the Farrelly world. Like, it put me in this place. It was like, can I be like one of those Farrelly actors who's in like 7 movies in a row? Like you create a community. And once you like working with people, you keep working again and again. So like, look, find your tribe, man. Go find your tribe as soon as possible, and be open to like giving up your time to be generous to others. And then don't be afraid to call in favors of like, come be generous now with your time and help me make my stuff. Like, we need each other, man. If anything this last year has taught us is like, oh, dang, we are this whole being separated thing. This is not for the human race. It's not good for us. We are created to be like in community. And that applies even to creation, even though creation is very much like possessive. This is my thoughts made real on the page. This is my work. And it is. It's a weird thing, because it is part of you that came out of nothing. You create things oftentimes out of nothing. And so it is very precious. So to be rejected into your representation of your essence, your essential self, it can be, I understand it can be harmful. But man, find your tribe, man. Don't go it alone.
Right on. That is sage words of advice from Brendan McNamara. Find your tribe. And it is absolutely true. It really is. And I understand what you're saying exactly about the networking portion and the stigmatism around it. And well, they are in a way 2 separate beasts, like you said. And
yes, they can be. Yeah.
Find your creative tribe. I like that. I like that very much.
Yeah. Hope it helps someone.
Any future creative projects for you on the horizon?
Man, I am currently living in the Southeast. I live in North Carolina now. I moved to North Carolina just over a year ago. And so I have been auditioning a little bit locally. But I also, I'm just like, I don't know what to do. And then in some ways that was either exacerbated or ameliorated by the entire industry shutting down for like 9 months to a year. So in some ways I don't feel that far behind. But I'm auditioning for stuff like regionally, like in New Orleans and Atlanta. And then honestly, it's been such a boon to my like psyche that Loudermilk got picked up by Amazon Prime. So then I have somewhere for people to like see my work. Because honestly, that show was pretty much hidden. That was on Audience Network, which whenever I would say that to anyone when it first came out, they would just look at me blankly. I was like, oh, well, if you have DirecTV, you have it. Or
with AT&T, right?
AT&T Uverse. If you have those cables, people are like, on cable? And I was like, yeah, people still have cable. It's AT&T. It's like a huge company. I mean, they're this $1 billion, $1 trillion company. It's huge, but still no one had seen it. So the fact that got to be out now and they finally released this 3rd season, like has given me some like greater hope of like, oh, good, my work is out there for people to see. So as of right now, I'm just at home writing stuff and trying to be disciplined about writing scripts. I've always worked as a writer, like as like a day job.
Oh, cool. Okay, I was going to ask you about that.
And stuff like that. That's been most of my. I've been working as a PA since I was like whatever, honestly, probably a teenager, but getting paid to do it since high school or whatever. So I've just production has always been my gig, and writing is how I made honestly most of my money in Los Angeles when I lived there. So I've just been writing stuff, and I just wrote a children's book. And just got an illustrator on board. So we're doing character sketches right now before we draft it out. And just been trying to over this past year, it's been a lot of just like, how do I fill time and still stay creative while nothing's happening at all,
Right. I hear you. That's cool. I look forward to seeing your children's book. That's fun. That's a lot of fun. I've always envisioned myself as somewhat of a writer and try to get creative like that. But it's exciting. Any indication if there's going to be a season 4?
I really don't know. It is the hopes for season 4 remain hopes at this point. When it got purchased for like exposure to the public through Amazon Prime, because actually very sweetly, now Audience Network doesn't exist anymore, so I'm not kissing anyone's ass right here, but very cool. They when they filmed the entire season 3, millions of dollars, man. I don't understand. I mean, I get super psyched when I win money on guys' grocery games. I don't understand spending millions and millions of dollars shooting an entire season of a television show and then being like, I don't know. I think we're going to shut it down. Just throw that away. That's amazing to me. That's AT&T money.
Yeah.
But they shut it down, right? And then they could have, and I know many companies that have done this. I've actually worked for some in the past where when they shut it down, they usually will like sell off their library, right? So they could sell it to some company in Germany or whatever, which literally happened to another company I work for. And I wrote and made things for 3 years. They sold it to a German company. Now none of it is available anywhere online. Like 3 years of writing of my life, just all gone.
Man.
All my work, which is so weird in the internet age, right? You're always so used to everything you do can kind of last forever. So Audience Network could have done that, but they gave the rights back to the producers. So they gave it back and they're like, you can just shop this and take it anywhere. It's yours now, which is real. I mean, that's just lovely. That's like that's a nice way to work. If you're not going to use something, give it up. A lot of networks don't do that. Like if your pilot doesn't go, they still own your pilot. And that horrifies, as a creator, that horrifies me. You know what I mean? If you're not going to use it. It's the same way if you like give your buddy a present, right? And he's like, oh, I'm not going to use it. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that was mine. So I'll just take it then, dude. I'll take it back. If you don't want it. If you don't want to ride my bike, I'll take my bike back. So they gave it back to them, which is fantastic. So they sent out a big like blast so now I actually have all my cast members' emails, which I didn't before. I can just email Ron Livingston anytime until he blocks me after I do it once. But like Peter Fieri sent a blast out to everybody being like, hey, we're on Amazon Prime. Please let everyone know. This is exciting. This is a great opportunity. We'd love to work together. Because honestly, everyone loved each other. Like again, the Farrellys work with a lot of the same people over and over again because everyone flipping loves each other. And we all love each other, honestly. Like Peter is a huge, huge part of that because he fosters an environment very deliberately and specifically he's certainly the flippin' boss, you know what I mean? It is a show by, you know what I mean? By him in a lot of ways. Bobby Mort created it and wrote it, so it's his child, but the show itself, the production, is certainly spearheaded by him. But he's such an open dude where literally, and he says this out loud or whatever, he said it before, we're like, I don't care if you're working lighting or you're like on the writing staff or if you're working janitorial. If you have an idea about a scene, like, let me know. Let me know. Cool. I might use it. You know what I mean?
Right on.
I was actually there during season 2. I just came and hung out for a week because I was supposed to be part of season 2, but a terrible real life tragedy intervened and destroyed my whole storyline. Horrible, literally one of the worst times of my life. But I came in anyway just to hang out and shadow him as a director. And literally by day 2, I was like, okay, I have ideas. And let me just tell him, you know what I mean? And I was like, and I did it and I felt nervous. And he was like, oh, cool. Took some, didn't take some. But I was like, so by day 3, 4, I was like, just spitballing ideas. Like I was in the writing room, just for other characters, you know what I mean?
Right.
So he has that magnanimity. And indeed is like kind of a leader in that way where he doesn't feel like a sacred, like a dad. You can't go into his office and talk to him. You know what I mean? Like he's a free flowing father of the production. So likewise, and he sends out an email, tells all of us like, let's try to make this happen. Let's all do this. So everyone blast us out, let people know. So he's certainly on the train of like wanting to make it happen. They shopped the show around after it left audience for like 6 months, 8 months. And then he also, I don't know if working through a publicist or whatever, every once in a while there was like another story about it. So he was obviously like getting stuff out in the press to kind of help the process. And it worked. I mean, it paid off. They eventually sold it. So at least that paid off. And at this point, I'm just out there relentlessly liking every tweet about Loudermilk and like trying to like, I literally have a Reddit thread going right now where I was like, I didn't start it, but someone like asked a question about my storyline. I was like, oh, well, what happened? They were like, wait, you're the actual guy? I was like, yeah. I was like, dude, whatever I can to foster fandom, right? Because that's really what drives sales, I think, right now is not even, I don't even know if it's actual like flipping success, right? Like the number one show on NBC just got canceled. I don't even know what it's about. But it was the number one show and it just got canceled. I was like, well, all right, but I'd never heard of it. I was like, because what drives things so much isn't necessarily even bigness, but it's like, does it make an impact? Are people going to be obsessed about this? Like, and that, not even if you're going to merchandise, but is this big enough that you could merchandise this? You know what I mean? Is this like Schitt's Creek where people are going to like use memes of it every single day? Is this something where people would like, are going to buy the sweater? You know, can you create, I mean, again, this is the sort of comic book like time we're in, you know what I mean? We're a whole generation who grew up like Star Wars and Star Trek nerds, and like we've grown up with like fandom. And now like, so can you create that kind of fandom for any piece of art or craft that you do? So I don't know. We're trying to make it happen. It would be awesome if it did. The people involved want it to happen, but ultimately we're not in control of whether it will or not.
I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you. Okay, so quick lightning round questions. Just for pop culture needs.
Fantastic. You can tell I'm very short. I'm very short-winded, so lightning will be so easy for me. Yeah. And for Buzz. Yeah.
Let's play the game then. Here we go. Just to bring it back to pop culture real quick. Just a few of them. Marvel or DC?
Marvel, 100%.
Favorite Marvel movie?
Oh gosh, favorite Marvel movie
or MCU show? We'll encompass that.
Yeah, the whole thing. Favorite MCU show, Legion. Favorite Marvel movie. It is so close. I know this is a cheat, and I hate when people do this, and I'm about to do this, but I'm gonna go ahead and say Into the Spider-Verse. Like, I mean, that's
a great movie.
Come on, and then Logan right after that.
Love both of them.
Neither which are MCU, which is messed up because the rest of my top 10 is probably MCU stuff, but. Sorry, guys, you didn't do the best. MCU isn't trying to do the best, though. This is maybe a controversial take. They're not trying to do the best. They're trying to do like B+ stuff. They're not trying to do Sandman is DC. I'm trying to think of like a good example. They're not. You know what? Marvel isn't trying to make like Sam Keith illustrated movies. I don't know if you know Sam Keith, but he's like a flipping weird artist. They're not trying to do the best of what they do. They're trying to do the best of the most popular stuff of what they do. And I think they're doing it fantastically. I think honestly, like the worst MCU movie is like maybe Iron Man 2, maybe. It's like a C+, B-. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
Like their failures are really not failures. You know what I mean? Whereas you look at the monumental failure of like that last X-Men movie or the X-Men 3. The Apocalypse one, the Brett Ratner one. I mean, those things are freaking D movies. Those are flipping awful, right? But the MCU things, they're very rarely, I think, even aiming for majesty. I think they've occasionally hit it. Like I think the first Guardians of the Galaxy was such a surprise to me, and I think it was hilarious and artful. And I don't know, they've hit significant high points, and they've done what Marvel Comics has always done really well, which is to like make things meaningful, make things sort of beautiful, and tying together multiple streams of things that actually are a bit of like a head involve an intellectual capacity for maintaining storylines and information. But in terms of art and cinema, I don't even know that they've really they have not made the same like level of attempt as like, for example, like a Logan, which I think attempts to be like a somber and serious piece of cinema to me, which is what I loved about, I mean, Wolverine. I literally had the paperwork when I was a child to change my name to Logan. And then it was going to cost $25 and I had saved up the money. And then I just chickened out. I was going to change my name to just Logan.
That's awesome.
No last name, no nothing. That dude is like I know his name is like James Howlett, and I'm not okay with that. That feels like I know it's not retcon, but it feels like retcon to me because it's too important. But like Logan to me was like, this is why I loved comics, because comics were heartbreaking. They were about wounding. They were about being outside, being alone, being lonely, and then also being like occasionally having the power to like really do something about it.
I hear you. And
like stab him to the face.
Wolverine's one of my favorite too. So I'm right on board with you.
Love that guy.
Yeah.
Love that guy. Sorry, I actually killed the lightning there, but I did at least want to follow up when I said just MCU isn't even really trying, which isn't exactly what I meant. But
MCU, I think what they do so well, and I don't know if it's just Kevin Feige or Louis Desposito, and the way they intertwine all the storylines across all their movies and have it make sense is just boom, mind blowing to me.
It's masterful. It is really. It is the ambition and the success of the ambition has I mean, it's been done in comics forever, so in some ways it's not that big of a deal. But in cinema, just never. No one has even attempted this. Not only were they first to attempt it, really, they were the first to like stick the landing, man. Really, in some ways, in their multiple phases, they really did kind of like they triple jumped it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they stuck the landing like multiple times. That is. It's amazing. So in some ways, like trying to make like an actual like great film or like a true piece of like provocative art is almost too much to ask. You know what I mean? It's a little. I'm kind of being a jerk about it. It's like they've already done like one of the most monumental, successful, difficult things of all time. It's like a gymnast. You know what I mean? It's like mocking it's like a Simone Biles being like, sure, she's literally just flipped 4 times in the air and landed on her like pinky. You're like, but she didn't do it that beautiful. You know, she's the best of all time, but like, that's some pretty, because there's some people who aren't as good as you, but they're really pretty when they do it. So I'm being a bit of a jerk. Let's be honest.
Well, let's hope Chloe Zhao's Eternals is that film that you're looking for.
I know, dude. She is so flipping talented that it very well could be. I don't care about that project at all. That comic book means nothing to me. But me either. I have no personal connection to it. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
I've read it, but I'm like, it doesn't grab me. But she's so freaking fantastic that I will be there Thursday night, the earliest screen. You know what I mean? I'll be there at like the 7:30 showing on Thursday night. So
right on. Yeah. Star Trek or Star Wars?
Golly darn it! Star Wars.
Okay.
Yep.
I hear you. I'm right there with you.
Listen, it's the toys I had. You know what I mean? It's the Millennium Falcon. It's the Han Solo on Hoth that I lost, and like literally was one of the most crushing blows to my young life, and like being rejected by girls in kindergarten. Like that's the stuff I've Star Trek, especially Star Trek Next Generation, is probably the thing that I've spent the most hours consuming. Yeah. But Star Wars is the stuff of my literal dreams.
I hear you.
Like I literally have dreamed that world throughout much of my life. And dude, once you can penetrate someone's like not only just their waking life, but their dream life, dude, the level of success is out of this world. So Star Trek Next Generation was like impactful to me, and I spent a lot of time watching it, and I like it a lot. Not anti, but yeah, Star Wars. Come on.
Yeah, I hear you. No,
yeah,
I would say the only thing that really was Star Trek Next Generation for me was the holodeck. And every time they included the holodeck on there, I always wanted to see that episode. And that was like my only takeaway from the Next Generation. But
yeah, it was fantastic. Star Wars especially Star Trek too, because since I grew up on like X-Men comics, it was kind of like the Danger Room.
Yes.
It was using the Danger Room for like recreation. It was like, this is video games sort of meets literature and blah, and you can kind of custom design it. And I was like, that is the holodeck and the food replicator, as long as it tasted good. I was like, those two inventions, someone's got to get on those. People were like, what about hyperdrive? Don't you actually want to like travel through space? And I was like, if I had the holodeck, I think I'm cool. I could just pretend to, right?
Right on.
I think that would be enough.
I think there were that's a lot where Ready Player One world gets its pull from is that type of thought process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, last lightning question for you. And I'm not sure if you watch these. These are both Amazon Prime shows: Invincible or The Boys.
Golly gee whiz. Okay, as an Amazon Prime show, to be lightning about it, I'm going to say The Boys. As a comic book property, I'm going to say Invincible.
Okay.
Because I've read both, I've watched both. Mm-hmm. The Boys, I couldn't, as a comic book, I couldn't read anymore. Like I read maybe 12 or 13 episodes, and it's literally too gross. Like it's so much more sort of like violent, sexual, and morally reprehensible than the show is. And the show's already like it heads there, right?
Really, the show is tamed down, huh?
Oh, show's way tamed down. Yeah, yeah. Because literally, like comic book number one, like is like juiced, like superpower juiced up prostitutes, like engaging in violent sex with like superheroes. Because they have to, or else they literally would be like
die.
They would be murdered by the acts they were performing. And I was already like, okay, I get it. You're taking the Watchmen sort of thing of like, what if this was in the real world? And then you're like, what all the terrible thing? And you're like, but it makes you a little like. After a while, I was like, I'm sick to my stomach by this comic book. I can't do it anymore. Like, and also because I enjoy stuff that I shouldn't enjoy in that world of the like. I enjoy the horribleness of it, and then at some point, it starts to make me feel bad about myself. Like, but in a good way. Like I should. There are some things that like I don't think we're meant to overly indulge in. You know what I mean? They can foster aspects of ourselves that don't need to be grown. So hence I stopped reading The Boys, even though I really kind of liked it. And Invincible though is just like, I mean, that gets pretty dang brutal too. But that never took me to that place of like where I feel like, oh, I'm indulging something repulsive about myself.
Right.
Oh, like you know what? Oh, Hostel. Did you ever see that movie Hostel or any of those movies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So torture porn, that whole genre, it exists. I'm sure it's helpful for some people. For some people, it's just scary. But I kind of like violence, right? I kind of enjoy. Like, some part of me genuinely enjoys it. Like I'm horrified by it, but I'm also kind of like like giving me a little creepy thrill. This is why I need the catharsis of playing a villain. I need to like get this out of my system. But by the end of a Hostel movie, you're like, not only I feel gross because like I watched all this terrible stuff that's going to haunt my nightmares, but I feel doubly gross because I'm like, yeah, I can see why someone would pay to torture someone to death. You're like, oh no. I don't want to live in that place. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to feed. You know what I mean? It says we have these two, they're like a sort of indigenous myth. We have these two wolves in us, you know, which one is the one that survives, the one you feed. I don't want to feed that wolf.
Right.
That can even with the TV show, that can be the problem with The Boys. In that, like, there's part of it that you're like, I kind of like the stuff that makes me feel terrible. But it's also so funny and it's pretty spot on, too, in terms of, like, it is a satire of our world right now.
Exactly.
Combined with that comic book world in such a great way. And listen, both those shows are flipping incredible. Again, talk about, like, 12-year-old boy, 12-year-old Brendan being like, these are both, I can just click play and then watch another one, like, right now.
Yep. It's insane.
I can't believe it.
Right.
I can't believe it. Although, you know, if anyone on Amazon ever listens to this, those are both shows that they trotted out on a once a week basis, right?
That's going to be my question to you.
No. Enough. No. This is the best thing about streaming. Sorry, is that next lightning thing? Am I jumping ahead?
Well, you didn't jump the gun, but it was just a follow-up question. It was going to be, do you prefer binge watching or do you like the episodic weekly release?
Yeah. I despise the weekly release on streaming.
Okay.
I don't want to wait. I'm like, no. You're rupturing the paradigm, and you're not rupturing the paradigm to give me the thing I actually appreciate. I like appointment television. I think appointment television is similar to going to a movie.
Right.
Appointment television, like if you watch something when it airs, this is why DVR was cool. But at the same time, I was like, oh, this doesn't help. This doesn't foster like intensity of fandom in the way that I've always appreciated it, where you're like opening night of a movie. Like when I saw Mad Max Fury Road, the midnight screening at the Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood, I know every single person there is all in. Now that film was fantastic. Yeah. I probably think it's one of the like 10 greatest films ever made of all time. I think
it's a great film. Tom Hardy was wonderful.
but like everyone is there for this like full on-a-thon. They are there completely. Now DVR came around and then kind of be like, oh, okay, well you can kind of start casually consuming stuff, and that's fine. I want there to be multiple of people, but I also want to like be around my folks and I want to vibe with those people. So just like live sports generates a particular energy. If you watch a sports game or you watch a fight or whatever, I watch a lot of like MMA. So if I watch the fight like later than other people, it doesn't feel the same. There's
like watching a replay.
Yeah, there's like an alchemical, there's an invisible energy, something. It's very woo-woo, but there's a connected something happening where we're all focused on something. So I like if some things are going to be parsed out, we all have to consume them at the same time. And there are literally potentially like millions of people watching this now, and you're in this together. Now, when you just pop things out as a streaming, people are still just watching it whenever they ding dang. Well, please, you've not enhanced the awesomeness of it. All you've done for me is then take away the one joy I had about streaming. Is like, even though you robbed me of communal experience and made it all about me, what do I want? And I was like, I lived my whole life serving myself. Like I've kept myself alive for 40 some odd years, right? So like I'm doing pretty good on that. Thanks.
Right.
Again, this is my iconoclastic inclination against the community. So I try to foster community. So when you drop things out, you just took away this like wonderful godhood of self thing, but you didn't really replace it with anything good. So I want more. Like I liked, I think season 1 of Boys was bingeable, I think, but season 2 wasn't, or something like that.
I think it might have been, yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't think I've ever binged an entire television program. I know maybe I'm generationally off target to be the only person who's never like literally binged a whole show. But I've certainly like, when it's flipping good, I want to watch like a movie's length of content. I want to watch like 3 episodes in a row, maybe, maybe 4, and then regret it in the morning. But if it's good, the best thing about this like fantastic television is I want to stay in that world. The same way with a really great movie, you're sad when it's over.
Exactly. You don't want it to end.
You're like, oh, I want to stay in this world. Like a Star Wars, right? I'm going to go to sleep so I can go back. I want to go back to Tatooine, like right now, Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I'm opposed. I'm opposed to this once a week, trying to like draw you out in drips and drabs. Disney, though, is the worst. Listen, they're the flipping worst because they launched their thing with like none of the shows we wanted. I bought 3 years of Disney Plus at once because I have kids. So I was like, all right. And I've been stockpiling DVDs and Blu-rays for years of all the Disney stuff. Because Disney at any time can do the thing they used to do in the DVD days where they're like, all right, that one's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 3 or 4 years. Lion King's back. Now it's your time to, now it's gone. They said they launched Disney Plus. There's no Song of the South, which I've still never seen. And then they have none of the shows that we want. And then when they finally put them out, they're like, here's The Mandalorian. First episode's awesome. But they're like, when one. There you go. You bought for 3 years. Wait a week. Oh, and here's 2. There you go. Enjoying that? You enjoying that? Cool. And you're like, oh. And you think that's enough? No.
Right.
How dare you? Luckily, I don't have any strong feelings about it.
No, good. You don't really care that much. You're very nonchalant about it.
No. It's casual. I haven't really thought it through at all.
Well, just want to thank you again, Logan, for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you for calling me by my name.
Yes, bringing that 8-year-old back to life here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Appreciate your time, Brendan. Thank you for all your insight. And we got to do this again sometime soon. So thank you again for taking your time here today.
This is so much fun, man. Of course, dude, I love geeking out about anything.
We appreciate your time.